is going on, guys? Welcome to the Only Football channel. Happy Thursday. If you're having a long weekend to celebrate Memorial Day, I hope you have a great weekend. If it's starting off right now, cheers. We are going to go over today, as you can tell by the title, projected 32 starters in the NFL this season. And this is obviously post-draft, post-free agency. Most moves that will be done have been done. There are some exceptions. There's still a guy named Davante Adams sending out some whispers that he may want to go somewhere else. We're going to have to look and see what's up with that. We will talk about that today. But then you have your other guys that we know will have a different home. Guys like DeAndre Hopkins, who is still available and on the market. But for the most part, we have come to a pretty good place in understanding the projected starters for the 2023 NFL season. And I figured, of course, you're in Broncos country. That's better. We would start with the Denver Broncos. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. So, without further ado, and some people, I'll just tell you now, because apparently people are still figuring this out. It's not open sesame, it's open sesame. Says me. Open sesame, not sesame, not like a sesame seed on a bun. Look, I'm hearing that this is very confrontational. I'm willing to have a debate about it. But I'll just say off the bat, if you're siding with sesame, I don't think that's very compelling just because a sesame is a seed where sesame makes it's practical. It makes sense. But, the floor is yours. I'm willing to have an open discussion about it if you guys would like to defend open sesame in the comments. So going over the 32 projected starters will not only be good for every team to kind of have an idea of where they're at, but it's also good to kind of circle, hey, there's a hole here still that needs to be filled. So for the Denver Broncos, the projected starters, you got Perine at running back, who was a backup for the Colts for a while. We just heard Javonte Williams. We were expecting him not to be ready till maybe midseason. Sean Payton just went out and said that he should be ready to go week 1. That is great news. But Perine is locked in here at the number 1 position just because, it's good to be optimistic, but we're not going to rush Javonte back. So Perine starting. Then at the 3 wide receivers, we have Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, and Tim Patrick coming back from that ACL injury. Tight end, we have Greg Dulcich, who we drafted last year. He has a lot of promise. I think he's actually going to be pretty solid. We drafted him because we sent Noah Fant, our 3 years ago first overall first draft pick from Iowa. He went right after TJ Hawkinson. They both played on the same team. But we sent him along with Drew Lock, who was his quarterback at Iowa, to Seattle. So we had to draft Greg Dulcich last year to replace him. He's filled in pretty solid. Now, here's where a lot of the attention has been in this offseason. The offensive line. Garrett Bowles, he's a drafted Denver Bronco. He did really good. He had the most holding calls of any left tackle in the league 2 years ago. And then he had an incredible bounce back season, got himself a contract. So he's going to be there. Hopefully he'll be able to have a solid year for us. He kind of, after a really good year and getting that contract, we saw a little more of the old Garrett Bowles last year. But honestly, when the entire line is this bad, there's a lot of dirt on everybody's fingers. So left guard, Ben Powers, we bring him over from Baltimore. Lloyd Cushenberry, honestly, not a great center. He was considered the best center in the draft class. I believe that was 2018. We got him early in the 3rd round. I think the first pick of the 3rd round. But he's only got a job right now because we just don't have anybody better, but it wouldn't take much to replace him at the position. And then Quinn Miranez, Right guard, this guy you might have seen in highlights. He's got the dreads. He's just a country farm boy. Most likely you've seen him in a play where the running back is, being kind of stopped by a defensive player and he's driving the entire play forward. He's just a really dirty physical player. I like him a lot. And then Mike McGlinchey, we brought from San Francisco. So the line looks pretty solid. But the biggest question mark, quarterback, Russell Wilson. What is Sean Payton going to be able to do? Can he fix Russell Wilson? If Payton can get Wilson to playing back at an average starting quarterback level, that would be a huge step. But if his continues struggle, it wouldn't be a surprise to see backup quarterback Jarrett Stidham play later in the season, because we saw the Broncos sign Stidham pretty aggressively. The Raiders were planning on signing him, and Sean Payton went and took him to sign Stidham to a large deal for backup quarterback. So I'm keeping my eye on that. Defensively, Randy Gregory, Zach Allen, we brought over from Arizona. Cardinals had a terrible season last year, but Zach Allen was one of the bright spots. And he just came over this year with Vance Joseph, who was their defense coordinator last year. DJ Jones, defensive tackle, edge, Baron Browning. We've seen a lot of glimpses of a really good bend as far as, rushing the quarterback at that edge position. But we haven't really seen consistency out of him. When he's playing good, he's really good, but it's been a little inconsistent. Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, those are our two linebackers. They were both responsible for the most tackles on the team last year. Patrick Surtain locked in at cornerback number 1, and then Riley Moss. The white cornerback is going to be projected as cornerback number 2, and then K'Wan Williams, Justin Simmons, and then Denver just signed Kareem Jackson. So all in all, I think that there's enough talent on here for this team to, have a lot more production than we saw last year. But obviously it's hard for me to look at this with a non-biased point of view. I love the Marvin Mims Jr. signing out of Oklahoma. I think he's going to come in and have a role right away. So yeah, I think Denver's got a solid roster. There's not a spot on this roster I look at and I'm like, we have got to address that. If there was one, it would probably be center. Next, you got the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Chiefs, they're always going to be good as long as they have this first one, Patrick Mahomes, quarterback. I mean, what else needs to be said, right? Running back, Isaiah Pacheco. We saw Pacheco have a really good season last year. I expect him to even have a better year this year. Kadarius Toney, he was traded over from the Giants. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, we saw these guys do pretty well. But then here at the number 3 position, we see Rashee Rice. So Rashee Rice will be something that I'm going to be looking at. If Kadarius Toney keeps getting hurt and Sky Moore's poor rookie season is a sign of things to come, then there's a chance that rookie receiver Rashee Rice is going to be able to come in at some point and be the one to replace Juju Smith. And that I'm keeping my eye on that because honestly, at some point, probably could happen as early as week 3. This is going to be a guy that is worth drafting on a fantasy league, especially in your deeper leagues. Anytime you can potentially get in on a wide receiver that's going to be getting passes from Patrick Mahomes, playing 75% of the snaps, that's somebody that I'm willing to circle. Tight end, Travis Kelce, we already know the deal there. Left tackle, Donovan Smith, Joe Thuney at left guard, Creed Humphrey at center, Trey Smith at right guard, and then Jawan Taylor at right tackle. We know that they lost a couple players on their offensive line. They lost Orlando Brown. Donovan Smith is definitely going to be a downgrade from Orlando Brown. but Jawan Taylor is arguably an upgrade at the right tackle spot. He's just had a lot of problems staying healthy. I know Denver tried a deal with Jawan Taylor and even made him the highest paid right tackle. And the guy played like 3 snaps in 3 years. So if he can stay healthy, he can be an upgrade at that spot. But that is a big if. The Chiefs have rebuilt their pass rush with George Karlaftis, this rookie that they drafted in the first round, Felix Ondukai Ozuma, and free agents Charlie Aminu coming aboard in the last 2 off seasons. But is it going to be enough? Karlaftis was solid, if unspectacular, as a rookie. It helps all edge options to be playing next to the team's biggest pass rusher, Chris Jones, inside. How many years in a row will Steve Spangnuolo, Spangnuolo going to take cornerbacks you don't know well and make them extremely productive? This could be one of his better groups with homegrown, mostly late picks in depths. The Chiefs haven't had a solid defense really since Mahomes took over at that quarterback spot. It is worth noting that they haven't really put together even really a top 12 campaign with Mahomes under center. Bill's in the chat. What's going on, Bill? He said evening. Happy to have you in here. The Chiefs linebacker group is dynamic. They added Drew Tranquill, who can be a super sub. Nick Bolton's earned a second contract offer, and each player in the linebacker trio has different strengths that they can tap into. The defense has a better chance to be above average this year than it did last year. Mahomes and great coaching is a powerful formula. This is not the most complete roster in football, but there's every reason to think the Chiefs will compete for another title because the intangibles are there. They have Mahomes, they have Andy Reid and Travis Kelce, and there's a team last year that if you looked at the stats, the defensive stats, you looked at the roster, you saw Tyreek Hill. I mean, there's nothing about this team that should have screamed Super Bowl. They were not more talented than the 49ers. They were not more talented than the Eagles. And, it just shows you when you have the best quarterback in the world, sometimes that's enough all on its own. But as far as just a personnel point of view, they do have better players this year defensively than they had last year. So, why can't they run it back? I don't think they will, but it wouldn't be the most crazy thing in the world to think. The Raiders have made a lot of moves, and if you have heard recently, Davante Adams is already expecting some type of a trade. So Davante Adams, his first year in the Raiders, I remember the offseason. Ryan Clark, he does a podcast where he goes out and he talks to the players in an unfiltered way. It's not on Sports Center. There's cussing and smoking. I can't remember what it's called right now. But, in the offseason last year, he was like, I remember they asked him something about Josh McDaniels, and he was like, not willing to talk crap about Josh McDaniels in any way. He's like, he's got all my respect. But just here we are 1 year later, and he's looking for somewhere else to play. That's what we're hearing out of, Las Vegas. And to be honest, it makes sense. Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to be an air it out type guy. And that is the type of quarterback that somebody like Davante Adams wants to play with. He wants somebody to air it out. He doesn't want to play with the Jimmy Garoppolos. And you know what? He's played too long with somebody like Aaron Rodgers to settle at this point in his career without a Super Bowl. Especially when you see that quarterback go to a team that is going to contend and you're in a division with the Chiefs. I mean, look, it doesn't take a genius for Davante Adams to wake up and, understand that he's not on a Super Bowl team right now. And he's probably at a point in his career where that is probably the most important thing to him. Getting the ball, having a big impact. Because look, you can't, when you get to, 30 and up, you start knowing that your clock is ticking. You always know your clock's ticking, but you're more aware of it, and you just don't have seasons to waste. Like when you're young, you can be like, "Oh, let me just get through this, this year, and then I'll look at getting a contract with a better fit." Once you get over 30, you don't have 1 year to just, suck it up, especially if you're already a proven player. I expect Devontae Adams to try to get traded, and this is going to sound crazy, but possibly the Jets to reunite him with Aaron Rodgers. Um, I don't think it would be the craziest thing, but there would be a deep wide receiver room, and you can make an argument that that's just too deep. But we will see. The projected starters still have Devontae Adams as the number one receiver. So starting at the quarterback position, they 1 year with Derek Carr was enough for Josh McDaniels. He brings in Jimmy Garoppolo, which to me feels kind of like you could say a downgrade, but you could also say it's not an upgrade or a downgrade. But you just can't say it's an upgrade, in my opinion. Um, Jimmy Garoppolo has played on really great defenses and he's had really great coaches. And I understand that he's won a lot of games and he's made it to Super Bowls, but you have to understand that the Raiders have always had a below average defense. Derek Carr is always playing catch up. He had, I think, the most comebacks in the fourth quarter of any quarterback in the last like 10 years, something crazy like that. It's because he's always playing from behind. When you're always playing with a bad defense, like I think if Derek Carr was playing on that 49ers team, I think that it's possible that he would have also been in the Super Bowl, maybe even won one. So to think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to come and play with, the defense and that the Raiders have right now, and it's going to be some huge change where it's like, oh wow, this was the missing ingredient. I don't think so. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is the missing ingredient. Running back, Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs was the best running back in the league last year, arguably. He did have a couple games that he just went completely ballistic. The game against Seattle that went into overtime, he had over 200 yards. I think he had 3 touchdowns. He just really had that season. And I was talking to some Raiders fans, and they were saying, "Oh, I don't really care if he did it once. He's got to prove it and do it again." And I brought up that when you look at the best running backs in the league, like because he said Derrick Henry was the best running back in the league. I said Derrick Henry had his big pop year when he stiffed arm the Jaguars on Thursday Night Football, and he became King Henry from that point. That was his third year. Now, I do think there's just something about running backs. There's a long list of running backs that Josh Jacobs was good last year and the year before, and nobody was saying he wasn't, but something happens in that third year where you really, can kind of, if you're one of the good ones, you can take the crown. But then once in a while, you get running backs that come out right away and they're amazing. Jonathan Taylor was great right away. Ezekiel Elliott was at his best right away. He actually got worse. Saquon Barkley was amazing right away. But you also do have to account that there are running backs that get a little bit better and then year three have a big year. And that's what Josh Jacobs did last year. And I expect him to have another good year. Jacoby Myers, wide receiver number 2. Hunter Renfrow, wide receiver number 3. Um, it feels like very similar to a New England team. You you wouldn't really have a receiver as good as Devontae Adams in New England, but Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow, like those are going to be your number 2 and number 3. And he feels good with that because he's been, he's had that in New England his whole entire career. These, Danny Amendolas and these guys that don't jump off the page, but they win Super Bowls. But they have Jimmy Garoppolo. They don't have Tom Brady. So I would ask Josh McDaniels to reconsider. Actually, I wouldn't because I hate the Raiders. So I love that he thinks that he can get the job done. Now, here's where things changed a little bit. At tight end, you have Michael Mayer, who was one of the best tight ends, if not the best tight end out of Notre Dame. He's projected to start. Darren Waller traded to the New York Giants. And then on the line, Colton Miller, Dylan Parham, and Andre James, Alex Bars, and Jermaine Elamuner. Defensive side of the ball, you have Max Crosby at defensive end, Jerry Tillery at defensive tackle, Chandler Jones at defensive end, Robert Spillane, offensive linebacker, outside linebacker, middle linebacker. You have Divine Diablo, and cornerback. Look, I don't know any of these dudes. This is a lot of new people. Three cornerbacks. They have Nate Hobbs, Duke Shelley, and David Long Jr. And then safety Marcus Epps, Trayvon Moorhig. The good news for Vegas is that their edge rushing trio with Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, and Tyree Wilson could be elite if Chandler Jones is able to rebound after a pretty sluggish season. That will be kind of the highlight of this defense. Nate Hobbs is a nice nickel cornerback if the Raiders leave him there rather than forcing him outside. Duke Shelley and David Long Jr. were rotational pieces everywhere else who will be asked to step up as starters. I do think with the type of corners that the Raiders are going to go ahead and full send this season with, they are really relying on Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, and Tyree Wilson to get after the quarterback because, it works the other way too. When you have a really good corner, it makes the pass rush look better because there's a lot of coverage sacks. But when there's a really good pass rush, it can make the corners look good because you're forcing bad throws. The receivers aren't able to complete their routes. So when I look at this defense, one thing that stands out to me is the Raiders are kind of all in on this pass rush being effective. But we're going to have to see. Tyree Wilson's a rookie, and is Chandler Jones going to have a back to elite season because he didn't last year. We know who Max Crosby is. He's going to be good. So, when I look at this, I still got the Raiders on the bottom of the division. Then the Chargers, Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson, TCU wide receiver they drafted, Gerald Everett, Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson, Corey Lindsey, Jameer Saylor, Trey Pipkins the third. This is a pretty solid offense. I mean, Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Quentin Johnson. He's got some growing he needs to do, but you're not asking him to come in and be a wide receiver 1 or 2. So, I think that just this offense has the potential to just have another great season. There's a reason Herbert had the most passing yards of any quarterback in his first 3 seasons. He has a good offense here, and now you are bringing in Kellen Moore, who's going to add creativity. He's going to lean more into Herbert's downfield strengths. I think this is going to be a good year for the Chargers offensively. And then defensively, Joey Bosa. They are going to have Derwin James at safety, best safety in the league, in my opinion. Defensive tackle, Austin Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day, Khalil Mack, still there from the trade with the Bears last year. Inside linebacker, Eric Kendricks, Kenneth Murray. And then at corner, they have J.C. Jackson, Michael Davis, Asante Samuel Jr., who had a hell of a game against Jacksonville, even though that was their last game. Asante Samuel did everything to make the Chargers go on to the divisional round with 3 interceptions. Was it 3 or 4? I believe he had 3 interceptions in the first half of that game. That guy is incredible. So, I mean, entering year 3 of the Brandon Staley era, the defensive roster doesn't look much better. Staley needs to get this group to average and hope the offense dominates, much like the Chiefs. I will always trust an offense first with the Chargers and have every reason to believe they have a top 5 offensive roster. And that's kind of what the Chiefs are doing, but I do think that the Chargers have better pieces than the Chiefs. Derwin James, J.C. Jackson, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Asante Samuel Jr., That's 5 of your 11 starters that I feel can, at any point be, a game changer on that defense. It's okay to have, 6 average dudes if you got 5 dogs out there, and I think they do. But this has always been, not to get it twisted, this has always been a team that is going to rely heavily on their offense, and I think they have another good offensive year, as long as they'll stay healthy, because we know Herbert got that rib injury week 2 Thursday night against the Chiefs last year, and that kind of screwed everything up as far as getting the ball downfield. So that is something to keep watch on as we go through every division. The first one released was the AFC West, so we'll continue to look for that. There were a couple more things I wanted to talk about. So Davante Adams, we talked about it. He said in a recent comments, he said he loves head coach Josh McDaniels. And this is my first time reading this, and this does not surprise me at all. I told you last season he had really strong words regarding Josh McDaniels, and I knew there were comments, but I hadn't gotten to this article yet. So, Davante Adams, it's possible that he knows who Jimmy Garoppolo is. He doesn't want to play with Jimmy Garoppolo. He wants to go to a contender, but he loves Josh McDaniels as a coach and a person. And I don't, the NFL is always trying to, the media pick a side. He doesn't like Josh McDaniels. Why else would he want to leave? And a lot of times, we live in a gray area. It's not black and white. Davante Adams said, we don't see eye to eye on what we think is best for us right now. That doesn't mean that he doesn't like Josh McDaniels, but I do think that means that he doesn't like his philosophy offensively. Excuse me. He said at the end of the day, like I said a couple times now, I'm ecstatic to get to work with the new guys. Adams said, Jimmy Garoppolo is a great guy. Love him to death. I didn't know him very well before he got here, but getting to work together for a little bit, being around each other, getting to know him, he's a great guy. Definitely excited about getting to work with him and everyone else that's here. As far as the front office, I haven't had a relationship in the past. This is 10 years for me in this game. I haven't had a relationship like I've had with those guys. Everything gets taken out of context. I wouldn't be here. I told you guys right after the Derek Carr thing, I was here to stay and wasn't going anywhere. You can grab something and run with it if you want to get clicks. That's what people do with me and things I say, whether I misspeak or if I speak up. But at the end of the day, I'm a Raider and I'm excited to be here. Which this is his remarks, after what he said in The Ladder, which was published in a piece for The Ringer. It says here that it didn't seem exactly like a glowing assessment, giving time to craft a response. Adams deflected blame Thursday, assuring reporters everything was wonderful, and his comments were blown out of proportion. So I did hear about this on sports radio, sports media, but not to anyone's surprise, when I heard it, from Colin Cowherd and everyone else, nobody even bothered to mention that Davante Adams went back on the record to clear things up, which is just such a snake thing to do from the media side. Because by the time that they were going live to talk about Davante's comments with not seeing eye to eye, he had already clarified, what he meant, and they don't even bother bringing that up. So, it is what it is. I'm sure there's a little bit of truth to what Davante Adams is saying. He doesn't believe that they're seeing eye to eye with everything, and I do think that that has a lot to do with philosophy, in the way maybe the game plan's being approached, the run first style. It could be anything, but that doesn't mean that he wants to, run away and go to a different team. But I just read this for the first time, but after hearing everything on the mainstream sports media today, I thought that he was asking to be traded basically. So that just shows you how much you can't rely on, you know, mainstream sports media to give you the news. So Adams is going to be playing this year, allegedly, or as of right now, with Jimmy Garoppolo, and he says he's excited to get to work. So we know that Devontae Adams feels really strongly about Josh McDaniels, and we know that the owner feels really strongly about Josh McDaniels. They asked him after the season wasn't going very well. I think they lost like 3, 4 games in a row. And we were like, is Josh McDaniels on the hot seat? And then he came out and he was like, don't ask me that again. And Mark Davis goes, he is not on the hot seat. He's going to be here for a long time. And we all just kind of were like, damn, okay, we won't talk about it anymore. But we were wondering why. You know, it's like, okay, okay, I get it. You always want to be, if you're an owner and if you're a head coach, it's same thing applies to your players. You want to give them the confidence to fail. Kobe Bryant said a really beautiful thing about playing when he was like 12 years old. He said he played an entire game. He didn't score a single point, but his dad sat him down and he said this was the best advice he ever got in his life. His dad sits him down, he comes in and he said, just so you know, whether you score 100 points or 0 points, I'm going to love you the same no matter what. And he goes, that was everything I needed to hear, because he goes, that gave me the confidence to fail. And then he goes, but fuck that, I'm going to score 100. So there's something to be said about, you know, saying something like that as an owner. Like, I don't care if he sucks this year or next year, like, he's our coach. And then as a coach, you feel like, okay, I can go out here and I can be myself. I don't have to worry about failure because now I have job security. And coaches do the same things with quarterbacks. Um, yeah, he didn't have his best game. He's our quarterback. Stop asking if he's our quarterback. He's our quarterback next week, the week after that, and the week after that. And then the quarterback obviously sees that and they're like, okay, I got to get my crap together because there's no reason I should be playing with any anxiety. I have job security. So if that's what is going on, then that's one thing. But the question that I think the general public has is, why does Josh McDaniels, how did he earn the job security to begin with? Because we've seen him be a head coach for Denver, and it was a total disaster that ended with him cheating and getting fired. And you know, then he comes over to the Raiders, and one of the top 12 quarterbacks in the league is, you know, kicked out of the franchise. They lose most of their games. I mean, it's just a total, it's a shit show. So I think we can appreciate the gesture that Mark Davis is trying to do, but I think people are only questioning the why. Like, are you sure you got the right guy that you want to double down on here? But we'll see. I really do think, I was talking to a Raiders fan at work today. He's a huge Raiders fan, so we talk a lot of shit to each other. That's a regular work day for us as Broncos Raiders fans. And I asked him, you know, if the Raiders suck, you know, what do you think? Well, the first thing I asked him, I said the Raiders over under 7.5. I asked him, are you taking the over or the under? And he goes, he thought about it a little bit, and then he goes, I'm gonna take the over. I'm gonna say 8. And I was like, yeah, I could see 8 games. And I said, if he wins less than 8 games, do you think he gets fired? And he's like, I don't know, man. I feel like the way Raiders Nation feels about McDaniels and the way Mark Davis feels about Josh McDaniels is just totally two different things. And um, that can be the case. We have seen that before. I've talked to a Patriot fan that told me if the Patriots have another 7-10 season, that Bill Belichick will be on the hot seat as far as, the Patriot fan base is concerned. But is he also at this point in his career untouchable. He's got his own son working as a linebackers coach. I mean, can you even remove him if you wanted to? Um, and usually you don't like to see that. You like to feel like the owners, the GMs, the fan base, everybody's kind of one in accord. And when it's not like that, things become very toxic. And I do think if Josh McDaniels doesn't have a winning season this year and have a playoff appearance, you're going to start to see that toxic side kind of boil over, because this was a Raiders team before Josh McDaniels came over that was playing the Chargers on Sunday Night Football Week 18 to go to go into the playoffs. It's not like Josh McDaniels took over this team and they were, 3-14. He took over a team that was performing better than they were last year, and they had a better quarterback, arguably. So this is going to be a very important year for Josh McDaniels. Is he going to be the coach for the next 10 years, or does he have one more year after that? I think it really does depend on what he does this year. The Lions, Jameson Williams addressed the gambling suspension. Dan Campbell says Lions are miles ahead with the wide receiver. The Lions drafted Jameson Williams in the first round last year, knowing his rookie season would mostly be a wash coming off of a torn ACL. While the receiver is slated to start the 2023 campaign, serving a 6-game suspension for violating the league's gambling policy, head coach Dan Campbell noted Thursday that the offseason work is vital for the 22-year-old. We're already miles ahead with him, Campbell told reporters. We didn't get this with him last year. He wasn't able to do any of it. So that in itself is like, man, just to be able to build from the ground up, not the season he's already in. Here we go. 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you see progress. So I think that's just it. Let him get better. He's got a lot of room to grow and develop. He needs this time. I think that's what it's about, man. We've got to sharpen. I mean, I should do it like Dan Campbell. That's what it's about, man. We've got to sharpen every little thing with him, sharpen the route, sharpen all of it, like any of the guys, but just get him as much time on task as we can at different positions. I just love these guys, man. Yeah. So anyway, I got a Lions fan that actually watches these. And he asked me, "What do you think about the Jameson Williams suspension?" And I was like, I think that players should stop gambling. And he was like, "Man, I don't really think it matters." Like, yeah, he's like, "Why is it such a big deal?" And I just told him, I said, "Look, the NFL is already under so much scrutiny with the whole." Was it in the script? Was it not in the script? That the way the Chiefs won the Super Bowl with that call. The last thing they need is for there to be any collateral damage with, the United States legalizing sports betting to where it just gives more of a reason for people to, think that their own players may be rigging the game like Paul Crewe in The Longest Yard. And plus, I think that it's such a privilege to play in the NFL. Like, if you're playing in the NFL, you are, 1% of the 1% of the 1%. And look, if you were to tell me right now, like, okay, you can be the head coach for the Denver Broncos, right? And then you said, but wait, there's one thing. And I'm like, getting ready to sign it. I'm like, okay, head coach for the Denver Broncos. And they're like, wait, before you sign it, you can't bet on FanDuel or DraftKings. Like, who gives a crap about that at this point? I'm the lucky son of a bitch in the entire world. I get to go be a head coach or an NFL football player. I get to play a game as a living. I literally don't have to be a real person. Like, it's like it's like a cheat code, man. You get to play video games your whole entire life. Like, yes, you can't have both. Like, don't get so greedy. You know, if you want to sports gamble, then go get a job working construction like the rest of us. You know, I mean, look, if you want to be a professional athlete and the only thing is you can't gamble, like, I'm not going to personally have any sympathy for you because you want to place a wager. You can place a wager when you retire, man. But as long as you're in the NFL, like, treat it like a business, treat it like a contract, be professional, you know. And I kind of convinced this guy a little bit because he was definitely like, "Oh, I feel like it's not a big deal." And it's like, this is not this is principle. We're talking about principle. We're not even talking about should it or should it not be, legal. We're talking about why is it even something that we're needing to discuss in the first place? Like the ethics of it, not important. What's important is that the rules are followed. And that is what comes with working for a large corporation. If you want to play arena football, there's a good chance that you can sports bet playing arena football. I don't know the rules. Maybe Canadian Football League. But look, if you want to be in the NFL and you want to wear one of the 32 teams on your helmet, you can't be on FanDuel. So just don't do it. It's such a stupid thing. You know, we're all only on FanDuel because we're trying to hit a 10-leg parlay, betting $5, hoping that we get $3,000. You know, these guys are making, $100,000 per quarter. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. So I hope that the NFL has kind of cleared everything up. They had to suspend 5 players: Lions wide receiver, Kafias, Jameson Wilson, safety Barry Hill, safety CJ Moore, and Commanders defensive end Tony. I just feel like we need to have a clear understanding. Like, just don't do it. Just don't do it. Um, and I'm sure that this is part of the indoctrination process. Like, when you come to the NFL, you do an indoc of the way we do things here. I'm sure that the sports gambling policy is going to be more and more of a focal point in these meetings because the NFL has made it clear with Calvin Ridley that it's not messing around with the sports gambling stuff. So just don't do it. Calvin Ridley was probably one of the best route runners in the league. And now people have totally forgotten about him because he placed a bet. How stupid is that? I think he's going to surprise a lot of people this year and he's going to have a great season. But he was, they got rid of Julio Jones. And Julio Jones was in his prime. He was really good. They got rid of Julio because Calvin Ridley was so good. And now 1 year later, nobody even talks about Calvin Ridley. You just got to protect your image. You got to protect your brand. Your ability to play football is your cash cow. You need to protect it at all costs. And hopefully, these young men have role models and mentors and people like that they can, have in their life to influence them and to look up to, and somebody to, put them on the right path. Because look, when I was younger, I was super dumb too. And I can admit that I made a lot of stupid choices when I was young that I wish I hadn't. So it's not like I'm finger pointing. I'm really just, looking out for the best interests of these guys. Bill's in the comments. He said athletes don't think like us. Look at Ja Morant and the NBA stuff, not gambling related, but this guy could throw away $230 million if he isn't careful. But yeah, I mean, look, this guy cares more about, having street cred as being, a gangster than, the fact that he makes $230 million. My uncle Wolf, he went to prison for 10 years. And I won't say what he did, but I will say that he was in a gang, and I won't say what gang it is either. Just because I don't want any like letters or anything. He's not in it anymore. And he used to say that I don't know why these athletes pretend that they're, like in the streets like that. He's like, you're not in the streets like that. You're a professional athlete. Um, and it really just stuck out to me because it's the same thing. He was like, rappers do the same thing. He was like, you're not really, you're not really repping that life. Like you're doing it for street cred, but you don't even know what that life's about. You're not like truly living it. And he's like making fun of rap music that's like, I killed him. He's buried under the ground at 17th and Collins. You can still dig him up and find his body. He's still there. And he's like, they're literally snitching on themselves in their music. It's all fake. And it's the same thing with athletes. And sometimes they get so obsessed with wanting they care more about, really living that life to where being an athlete making hundreds of millions of dollars kind of is takes second place priority. But even the people that were in that life, like you look at 50 Cent, and he talks about it, and he's like, the gang stuff was just a way for me to have protection until I became rich. And then I was out. He was like, nowadays you have people that are, looking to try to stay in that lifestyle to get, street cred and clout. And that's really it. That's what's sad. And that is, unfortunately, it's a really hard thing to point at because you could say, oh, you just don't have a role model. But John Morant, he went to a private school. His parents were very wealthy. His real name is like Clarence. It reminds me of that 8 Mile rapper. He's like, this guy's a gangster. His real name's Clarence. And Clarence's parents have a real good marriage. Um, but it does remind me of that, the John Morant stuff. So hopefully he can get his head screwed on. Because man, just watching people piss away that much money is extremely hard to watch. Um, but yeah, that's the deal with that guy. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with ex-Baltimore safety Tony Jefferson, but he is retiring after 10 years and he's moving on to scouting. Just something that I thought was worth a bring up, and see if there was any other news that I wanted to bring up here. Um, Elijah Moore leaving the Jets, coming to the Browns. He said that he's energized by the Jets trade, feeling wanted will make any player go harder. That's kind of hot. Um, so he said the Jets passing game struggled as a whole. He requested a trade. He was initially denied. So, week 6 last year, he requested a trade in the middle of the season. Robert Saleh denied it and then scratched him for the next game and benched him. So, like last year was a disaster offensively. So I could imagine that not Sky Moore, Elijah Moore. I could imagine that he is happy to, you're in a really bad situation when coming to play with Deshaun Watson is something you're pumped up about. I can imagine most people aren't psyched about playing with Deshaun Watson and having to share a locker room with that guy. So it just shows you how bad things were. And I feel like I would be mad. It's like finally you bring in Aaron Rodgers, and then Robert Saleh is like, hey man, remember you wanted to be traded. Remember? Here's your ticket. Go pack your bags. And he's like, oh my God, I wanted to get away from Zach Wilson. But I hope Elijah Moore is solid. He's just 23 years old, so he has an opportunity to start over and start fresh. So hopefully he's able to make an impact on the Browns roster. Amari Cooper is getting a little older. He's still 1,000 yards, every year. He's good for that, but they did need more receivers over there. So I think it's a good spot for him. And the news roundup for today is how I wanted to end this. This is the news roundup. Brandon McManus. I don't know if I told you guys, but Brandon McManus got released from the Denver Broncos. Brandon McManus was the only. This is crazy to think about, man. Brandon McManus was the only active player from our Super Bowl 50 roster. Isn't that crazy? Like, everybody's gone. And it's been that way for like since Von Miller got traded. So man, it's crazy, to see right before your eyes an entire team come and go. And it's amazing. You're watching it happen and you don't realize it because it's two players at a time. It's one player here, it's one player there. Next thing you know, you blink and you have an entire new team in front of you, and you have no questions of how we got here. You understand it all. It's just interesting, and anybody that really loves their team has probably felt this way. But Brandon McManus was our last piece from the Super Bowl 50 team, and Sean Payton decided to cut him. It saves money. It does. It's like we eat 2 million, but we save 2 million on the cap. I'm not too good with all that stuff, but from what I understand, most people felt like Brandon McManus was declining. So the Broncos are working out more the Cowboys kicker that kept missing all the extra points. I'm like, that's the guy we're replacing with. But yeah, hopefully we find ourselves a good kicker. Denver's been really lucky. They had Matt Prater, and then they rolled right into Brandon McManus, and we've been blessed in the kicker department. And it would really suck to, get on the wrong side of the kicking game. So Tony Jefferson's retiring from Baltimore. Isaiah Weston placed on the reserve retired list. Tony Pollard's leg has been able to participate in the reduced tempo OTA schedule. Coach Mike McCarthy told reporters Thursday. Pollard suffered fibula fracture in January's playoff loss to the Niners. Javonte Williams is working on a limited capacity during OTAs and was seen cutting and running routes during individual drills. Insane, man. Jerry Jeudy collided with cornerback Jawan McMillan during a team period, limping off the field and sitting the rest of practice with a high thigh bruise. Coach Sean Payton said Wednesday. Palmer added that Payton didn't seem too concerned about the injury. The Lions kicker Riley Patterson has been acquired via trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 2026 conditional 7th-round pick. So the Lions acquiring a new kicker, and they cut Thompson, a wide receiver. Brandon McManus signed to Jacksonville. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it, man. Oh, God. It's one thing when they get cut. It's another thing when you see. Man, I think McManus still had. I wouldn't have cut him. I don't like it. But whatever, man. It is what it is. I just can't believe he's officially a Jacksonville Jaguar. And that makes sense why Riley Patterson has been acquired, because the Jaguars upgraded their kicker and then sent their Riley Patterson to Detroit. So you are seeing some kicker chess going on right now in the NFL. This is a Las Vegas Raiders now. Injuries. Quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, that is just so predictable. Underwent a cleanup procedure on his foot after signing with the Raiders in March. So he went, I guess, I don't know. That's not a lot of information. All it says is he underwent a cleanup procedure on his foot with the Raiders in March. But that's 2 months ago. No update. It's almost dumb to even include that. The New England Patriots signed Anthony Fursker, a tight end. Linebacker Raquan McMillan placed on injured reserve. Ooh, that sucks. Jerome Cap, a wide receiver, was signed by the Jets. Cody Crest was a wide receiver signed by the Steelers. And last but not least, Tyjae Spears was a running back that was signed by the Tennessee Titans. A 2023 third round pick signed his rookie contract. And Bill in the chat saying, Ariza working out for the Jets. Broncos should be looking to fly him in. Why is that? Is he a good kicker? I'm gonna see really quick who Denver's working out, because I know that they're working out. I know that they were working out a couple kickers. Parker White. Brett Mayer isn't the only kicker who will work up for the Denver Broncos on Wednesday. The Broncos are also bringing in Parker White. White is 24. He went undrafted last spring, and he had several tryouts with NFL teams but was not signed. The Green Bay Packers gave White a reserve future contract, but he was cut this week to make room for new running back Emmanuel Wilson, who initially signed with Denver as a college free agent this spring but was cut after rookie camp. White is 6'5", 205 pounds, spent 5 seasons at South Carolina, earning second-team All-SEC recognition for a super senior in 2021. He scored a school record 368 career points with the Gamecocks and had a career-long 54-yard field goal. Bill said, punt god. Oh, sent the link on Twitter. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they should be. Now that all that personal stuff is cleared up, yeah, I mean, we do right now probably the priority is kicker, but I mean, as far as our punter, I think we're sticking with our punter we had last season. Skinny black dude, I can't remember his name. He had some good punts. There was a couple times where they were really short, but he was also really accurate. So I wouldn't mind a better punter as well. Let me make sure that we are keeping the the news came up and it says Broncos make decision on final remaining player from Super Bowl team, which is the exact way I worded it. I never saw that article though. So Bill said, sent the link on Twitter. Awesome. I'm going to check that out. I can't believe McManus is already signed by the Jags. I think the Jags, man, they're becoming sneaky. But yeah, that's the news roundup for today. I'm really looking forward to next week. I have a little bit of a weekend here, so I'm going to be spending the next little bit of time for these next 3 days putting together my remaining teams for the algorithm for strength of schedule. And then on Monday's episode, I will be presenting the 32 toughest schedules. I will start with the toughest and I will work my way down, and we will look and see how that compares to, the other list that the NFL has been putting out. But as always, please like this video. It's good for the algorithm. And if you guys wouldn't mind as well, I know you guys comment on it when we're going live, but once it's uploaded, if you could go in and comment as well, because a lot of times we get a lot of comments in the live chat, but the video won't have any comments. And YouTube, I just found out, uses the comments after it's uploaded to kick the algorithm. So would super appreciate that. And yeah, man, I will see you guys really soon. Bill said trying to help without interrupting your flow that much. Hello. Interrupt, man. Interrupt. This is an interactive show. You can interrupt me as much as you like, man. I appreciate you guys being interactive here. So, yep. Please tell your friends about the show. Tell everybody. And I will see you guys on Monday with the real strength of schedule. Bill, thank you for I'm not going to say it. You guys are going to have to wait. All right, guys. Have a good night. Go Broncos.